good? All right. Good evening. Welcome to this day, May 19th, school board meeting. We will do a call to order, please, and a roll call. Who am I talking?
Michael Boucher.
Here.
Kim Farah.
Here.
Stephen Finnegan.
Here.
Amy Gentile.
Here.
Barbara Kishka.
Present.
Katie Knutson. Kim McCormick. Mark Sherwood.
Here.
Kristen Savage.
All right. Thank you. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you. Do we have, yes, we do have the meeting minutes, regular meeting minutes. We have a couple of them to approve this evening. It looks like the April 21st meeting minutes and the May 5th. Why don't we start with the April 21st?
I'll make a motion to approve the April 21st minutes. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any conversation on that? All in favor?
I was gonna say.
Oh,
something.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, quick hands.
What was it on page 4? You have a sentence there that says Kim Farah asked, according to the state legislature, that the local boards will no longer be handling mask mandates, and then it jumps to a completely different thought after that. I was wondering if we were missing some information there.
The COVID update emails.
Because if I remember correctly, we had a little discussion about what law might have passed for the mask mandates.
Right.
Oh, you know, the only thing that needs to be deleted in that sentence, well, the COVID update, delete emails in that sentence are not required. That was the discussion pertaining to the website being updated.
Right.
With COVID numbers, so it shouldn't say emails.
So
I would just delete the word emails and it makes sense.
Yep.
The second line?
Yeah, just the word emails. While the COVID update are not required, it would be helpful to community members deciding if their children will attend in person or remote.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And then in that two sentences down, instead of, it says the emails will continue, it should say the updates will be, continue. And then at the end of that sentence, it says Kim Farah requested the school reopening plan be brought back to the board. That pronoun needs to be clarified.
Yeah. Okay.
okay.
Is that, Mike, does that satisfy what you were?
Yeah, I just,
Okay.
like I said, it didn't seem right, but that
Okay.
fixes it.
Great.
And then on page 5, where it says Barbara Kishka asked, what has changed since last year, as it states, to read carefully as side-by-side comparison. And then, I don't know if it matters to how accurate this is, but if I remember correctly, it was Barbara who asked to have a copy of last year's compliances to do that side-by-side comparison, and then Kim suggested to do the side-by-side comparison.
I think she asked Maria to
Yeah,
send it
I
out.
do think she did, yeah.
I recall that.
Yeah.
I believe these are accurate.
Yeah, I think that's, I see what you're saying, Mike, but yeah, I think this looks accurate because there was a request from Kim to ask Maria to have those sent out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because I think the conversation was me saying to Maria, do you have that from last year?
Right,
Her saying
yeah.
yes, and then me saying, can you send
Send
it
it
out to
out.
the board?
right.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's it.
okay, super. Any other questions or comments on the April 12th, April 21st minutes? I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
As amended.
Well, all in favor with the changes
Right.
recommended?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? Abstain. 501. Thank you. I looked over and I'm like, is Mark not paying attention? No, he was
Mark was
abstaining.
not here.
Okay. The May 5th minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the May 5th minutes. There's a change on page 5. Second paragraph from the bottom, it's just a typo. It should be Kristen. There's an G there that shouldn't be there.
Page 5?
Page 5.
Oh, Kirstings, yeah. Sorry.
So I'll make a motion with that amendment to it.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approval with the recommended changes? 6-0. Great. Do we have any delegates or individuals to speak?
Point of order, do we have non-public minutes? We should.
Thank you.
They were not in the packet.
No.
Yeah, they
non-public
wouldn't be.
minutes
Yeah,
are-
no.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we should have two sets.
One set or two sets?
Chris, is there a second set? Chris?
They're here.
They're-
so-
oh, they're both-
They're
oh,
stapled
sorry.
together, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, all right, so we have an April 21st and then a May 5th. So,
I'll make a motion to approve the April 21st non-public minutes.
okay, I have a motion.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any question?
I think these were edited in non-public last time because we had a
Oh, that's
change.
right, yep. Any questions, comments, concerns? All right, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Just for April, right?
This is just the, yes.
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opposed, abstain. Thank you. All right. The May 5th meeting?
Was this one where I was attending via phone?
Yes.
Could
We
we?
should identify that there.
Yes,
Yep.
please, note that I'm by phone.
Okay.
Thank you, Corey.
On number 2 on the back. I don't,
Why don't we take that to a non-public?
yeah, let's take that to
Okay.
non-public. It doesn't read correctly.
Yeah. All right, let's just hold on to the May 5th meeting, minutes. Actually, why don't we send these over, if I can? We'll,
We'll just do this in
do
non-public.
these in
There's-
non-public.
There's a change that needs to be made
Thank you.
on there.
You can have that one.
all right. Any delegates and individuals?
No.
None. I miss hearing from people. Okay,
Just gonna ask quickly, will Kaylee be here for the next meeting?
I hope so.
I will find out.
Kaylee, if you're listening,
We miss you.
we miss you. Okay, yeah, we'll find out. Okay. Current business, so this is informational. We have some save the dates, some of the end of year plans. I guess more of like the highlights here. Chris, do you want to go through these, or you want me to just run through those? I guess the last day of school, I think that's a big one, right? Is
Sent out a message today,
Chris sent out a message.
an email, rather.
Oh, we didn't hear your voice.
I know, Ken was unavailable,
Oh,
so I didn't want to bother him with a voice message, but he,
so it
so
looks like,
next time,
yeah, it looks
I
like,
can send a reminder to you.
perfect. Looks like I appreciate that. Last day of school is the 16th.
It will be June 16th. It will be an early release day, Thursday, June 16th. And on the 17th, we're working with local safety officials, local police departments and the safety committee to provide district-wide training with regard to increasing our school safety with ALIS training, the preliminary ALIS training. And as we're looking at it now, we're looking at doing probably 3 different sessions of 2 hours apiece, so we can rotate groups through so they're not too big. And then have some additional time for schools to have some professional development and wrapping things up and working through their last day.
That's great. So, again, for everybody listening, the last day of school is Thursday, June 16th. Just want to make sure I get that again.
It is an
Early release day.
And it is an early release. Thank you. Okay, so then looking at the end of year calendar, we have a packet for,
What would you like to?
We don't usually go through this. I would announce graduation date.
yep.
The rest of it we don't, because it's really just
Yeah.
pertinent to.
So just again, graduation is Saturday, June 11th at 10 a.m. And yeah, we'll, is this put up on the website so that,
It should be. There are a number, but we'll make sure that all calendars are updated.
great. So
Hopefully you'll need your sunscreen.
yes, I hope so. And folks should be able to check the website for all of that information. Okay, any questions? Okay, next is the budget transfer request. Oh, she ran upstairs.
She left.
So we'll come back to that. The superintendent evaluation and goal setting. So,
This is a bit awkward because he just joined us in January. and
Right.
Half the board is new and started in March.
This is, the process that I would follow is that at the next meeting, we should have our preliminary school board goals. Those should be finalized at the June 16th meeting. Then the superintendent typically uses those as a means to inform his goals. And that he presents his goals to the board the meeting in July. The board then approves those goals, and that sets the stage for the evaluation for the coming year.
yeah, thank you.
So we're gonna kind of skip the evaluation for the last few months.
Yeah, I mean, you could, but we didn't go through the part of goal setting, and, I mean, you're gonna be evaluating based on, I don't know.
A short period of time, yeah.
Short period, I don't,
Yeah.
I think it would be better, I mean, superintendent's not is on a 3-year contract now, to do it based on when the contract cycles would be coming up.
That makes sense.
And when the board's elected and changes over, and his goals really need to reflect what the board's priorities are, so
Yep.
I think it only makes sense to do it that way, but I'm open to suggestions.
I'm just pointing it out that.
Yeah, no, I agree, I mean, what do you propose as
Well,
an
I
alternative?
think it's fine at this point, given the short tenure and the recent turnover in the board. It wouldn't be a complete or comprehensive evaluation. So it's better to put the effort in making sure that we're set for next year. But if we do have any questions or concerns, to make sure that those get brought up during the goal setting.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? So just to summarize what Kim said, so next meeting, the June 6th meeting, is that our next meeting?
Second.
June 2nd, thank you. We will look at our preliminary school board goals. The superintendent will take that and utilize that as, to come up with his goals, which we will present the first meeting in July. And we'll start the evaluation process at that point. We do have a policy for that and an actual
Instrument.
goal-setting evaluation, which is really nice to see. So we can make those updates. And then, really looking at the last year, obviously Superintendent Kellen has been the superintendent for just a short period of time. So I'm not sure that it would be, I don't even want to use the word fair, but really accurate to base last year's goals on something that wasn't necessarily for you, right? So we will evaluate at that point in time. Any questions, comments, concerns?
But we don't expect the evaluation instrument to change. The goals might change a little bit, but
The instrument?
evaluation and goal setting.
No, well, we don't have any goals yet, so.
Right, so the actual,
The evaluation, just to give you a historical context here, you'll notice this was revised 2/18/21. This was, prior to this time, an SAU 55 policy. So we took it and revised it and put in a new evaluation instrument for the superintendent. You can thank Jen Silva, who did an amazing job on policy. We actually reviewed 2 different evaluation tools and felt this was the better of the tool that they brought forward. So this tool hasn't been used for our superintendent before. In the past, what happened with board members, and Steve, you might want to think about how this is going to be done, is the board members would the superintendent evaluation was almost electronic in nature. And board members would input their numbers in electronically in their comments, and then that way it could all be calculated numerical, and then the qualitative responses could be grouped for the board. So
Yep.
that's the way I do it, because you don't want to have 9 board members fill this out and then
Right.
somebody manually has to put it in.
right,
So somewhere over the next several months, we should think about getting this moved to an electronic format that can collate the information.
Yeah, even
Maybe
a Google
Ken can-
form would be able to do that, or,
Absolutely, Google Forms should be able to
Yeah.
do that, or SurveyMonkey.
yeah.
Yeah, something that's, anyway, so
Yeah.
that's what
Easy
you
and
want to.
available.
We're not married to this evaluation tool, this was just one,
Mhm.
but if you want to change it, then you've got to change the policy, because it's
Yep.
in the policy.
yep. I would actually like to have this go, I'd like the policy committee to take a look at this, just to review, before it sounds like there was a lot of work and a lot of thought that went into this, but, as you said, everything is turned over. So I'd like the policy committee just to take a look at this before we, move forward with it, but, we meet again early. We meet again soon, so we'll take a look at that.
I have a question, actually. I'm wondering, is there like a greater population that is surveyed for the evaluation? Like, do we do a survey of personnel? Because there's a personnel section in here, and as a school board member, it would be really hard to speak to that.
Well, good question, because yes, in the past, Steve, were you on the board when? No, I don't think anybody
No.
was. Jeez. No one was. All the SAU staff were surveyed,
Yeah.
and those responses, in a separate thing, were given to the board, evaluating the superintendent. And then the board used both the board evaluation and the SAU staff evaluation to bring those together to, inform, or they used that personnel evaluation to inform their evaluation.
Yeah.
So yes, that needs to be resurrected.
Yep. As well as I wonder, like, do the building principals are they reviewing this as well? I mean,
Well, you're with a new like the previous SAU had a lot more personnel. Well,
right,
I don't know how many SAU personnel are there right now, do you know?
SAU personnel?
Yeah, like specifically SAU personnel. Like Dana, Maria.
Roughly, I mean, in this building, we're at what,
10,
11.
11.
10, 11, so
Do I hear 12? No, I'm just kidding.
that 10, 11, I think before we had 14. So the building principals didn't. That's not to say that they couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
move
Open to
forward. I
that.
don't
I
think
think-
they did.
Yeah, I think,
Because it would have made it just even that much bigger, so.
yeah. This is
that's
why I think it's a
really the
good,
next level down.
review?
yeah, I think this is why I think it's good to have the policy committee review this. Because I do think this being a policy that was created for a different SAU, right? And
No,
No,
it
this is
was
standing
not.
up this
I'm telling you,
SAU.
we revised it before the SAUs, in anticipating of the SAU split.
Yeah,
We went in and revised this. This is not the old SAU policy. This is the one we fixed.
okay,
Jen Silva fixed.
okay.
So it's up to you, it's your call, but I wouldn't go back in and revise this again. We just revised it when we left the SAU.
Well, tweaking's
And you
okay,
haven't
but
used it yet.
And we haven't used it yet, yeah, you're right, we haven't even used it yet, yeah.
So the real question is, you want to take it to policy committee to then figure out how you want to execute it?
right, and Amy had a really good point, that there's probably ancillary things to do as well.
That's more of a procedural.
That is more of a
That is
procedure,
procedural.
right.
Yes,
So
that
if-
wouldn't go in the policy.
Right.
The procedure could be that,
But the policy committee is not going to shouldn't set the procedure, right? That should be the school
Right.
board's
right,
goal to set the procedure, so,
well, typically, no, the school board doesn't do procedures, the superintendent does procedures, so.
But it
even
gets
for a
little
superintendent
Tricky
evaluation.
when it's his own
Well, in
evaluation.
this case, I don't think it would be, I mean, he could draft a procedure
Sure.
saying that on such and such a date, this will be sent out to the staff.
How we're
and-
gonna gather information for the board to consider for the evaluation,
Yeah,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
all right, so,
There should be some electronic document showing you what was
okay,
files that Mrs. Belcher would have had from previous
iteration.
iterations of
I do
this.
understand your concern, or the optics of it, having the super kind of write his own.
yeah. Yeah, I guess it's less even about that as I'm thinking, you know, it looks like this evaluation form is truly for, or, you know, there's parts of this that are designed for the board, there's parts of this that are designed for others. I think I'd like to clarify who's completing what and how we're going to collate that, right? So,
This is solely the board's evaluation tool. The board is the only entity that can evaluate the superintendent.
Right,
So the board can certainly say, well, this section, like as Amy pointed out, we need input from the staff. And in order to do that, we want a 360 evaluation by the superintendent's immediate, you know, in the org chart, the next row down. And we can request the superintendent to develop that so that it can be used to inform the board's evaluation.
okay,
Makes sense.
yep,
But I also agree that thinking on a larger scale, thinking about doing those types of evaluations for building administrators would also be informative for their own practices
Yep.
and goal setting within their building.
yeah,
And we're working on the administrator's evaluation
Yep.
procedure and tools.
okay. Okay, so,
And I should be clear, to be brought forward, you know, once that's completed, that'll be brought forward to the association and to the board, and then looking ideally to be implemented this coming year. This current year, we're using the existing tool.
And it would be helpful, I think, to think about the timing of the board that's serving during most of the evaluation, because it is awkward to ask people who were just elected to evaluate the superintendent.
Well, again, let me just think about this from, you also have to think about it from a budgetary point of view. In the past, the superintendent's evaluation was done September, October, because then, I'm pretty sure, because then that raise would be input
budget.
into the next budget cycle. So it never really matches the board turnover. I got on the board and then, in March, and then I'm sitting on the superintendent's evaluation in September.
Yeah, well, that was my experience as well.
Well, that's,
So-
but that's from a budgetary point of view, if the evaluation determines the merit, at that point, the raise and the merit, then it has to fall that way because of the budget cycle.
Okay, so when are we aiming to have this completed for next year?
To be honest, I haven't really thought about it. I'm just
Okay.
thinking about it now. I think we
Yeah.
need to sit down
I
and
think-
kind of figure
Work out
this
the
out.
logistics.
yeah.
Because if you don't make it so that the CFO can input it into the budget by the end of December, then it can't go into the next July 1 year, so the superintendent doesn't get raised.
How about I do this? When I bring the board goals next meeting, I'll also have I'll work on in between,
I'm happy
ti-
to help you.
yeah, a timeline, talking about who will do the 360 evaluation piece. And we'll bring that to the board, for next meeting so that we can sort of establish what those expectations are of time, of who and of how, I guess. And utilizing obviously this policy and this, evaluation, format. Is everybody okay with that?
That's very good.
Thank you.
Okay. Man, give me more work to do.
You should take that up in my evaluation.
Yeah.
Raise in next year's budget.
Yeah. On that note, we will do the budget transfer request. Maria, please.
So we are just requesting a budget transfer due to high enrollment for our special education students out of district. We're experiencing a high enrollment in the elementary and middle schools. So we're requesting to transfer funds from the high school tuition line to the middle and elementary schools lines.
Make a motion to approve the budget transfer request dated May 19th from the CFO for transfers from high school accounts to middle and elementary school private tuition accounts.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion?
Thank you
Okay.
for making it clear, Maria.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. All in favor? 6. Thank you. Next is the Plastow water line. Carl, come on down.
Good evening. As most of you are aware, the Plastow water is coming available to Pollard Elementary School. There is increased levels of PFOAs starting to show in the area, and I feel it would behoove us to connect to the Plastow water line. Yes, ma'am.
We just did some arsenic filtration in the water system.
Not there.
I know, not there,
Okay.
but do we have an arsenic filtration in Pollard?
We don't have any filtration at the moment in Pollard that's not needed. We're going to be approaching a level that we're going to need for the PFOAs if we don't hook
All
up
right,
to the water
so
system.
we would be investing in a filtration system if we did not go hook up to the
Yes, ma'am.
city water?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I don't have a price for that because it's been Penachuk's understanding that we were definitely going to be hooking up to the town water systems. Yes, sir.
What does PFOA mean?
It's a chemical that's been put out by plastic manufacturers in the area that has fallen into the area and contaminated most wells in this part of New Hampshire, actually. I don't have the exact name for it. It's
We all have a few of us.
and there's PFOAs, PFLAs, and there's a whole. It's a fluoro contaminant stuff.
It's an alphabet soup.
It's nothing good.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound it.
Ingredients, when you read ingredients on something, if you can't pronounce them, they say don't eat it.
Arsenic. Okay.
There was a study done back in 2018, I believe, by the engineers that were handling the water hookups in the town. Nothing's ever been pursued with that, so we're looking to start getting back into that. We also have an obligation to upgrade our fire system to connect, to stay connected to the fire system that we currently are. It's a public fire system that they're changing over to the public water, so,
So we would have to change the fire system whether or not we
Yep.
hook up, right?
yes, ma'am.
Right. So that's basically adjusting the water pressure. They're changing the water pressure in the pipes And the sprinkler system has to be adjusted to deal with the new pressure.
That, plus we have to put a backflow preventer to prevent any contaminants from backing into the public water supply,
would
the
be
potable
good.
system.
All right. So that's cost that we would have to eat either way.
We're gonna do that. Are some grants out there that I just found out about that we could apply for to try to get some relief for the connection costs too, so the upgrades, so, I'll be looking into doing that as well.
I'm just looking for what is the total extra cost to hook up to the water system without the cost of the sprinkler system?
I don't have an exact cost of that.
Do we have a
A
ballpark?
ballpark of about $20,000 just to change our fire system and add the backflow preventer, somewhere
Well,
around there.
that's the fire system, but I'm talking about hooking up to the town water.
44, 743, somewhere around there. And then we have about a $4,000 a year for the cost of the water and $75 a year for the backflow preventer testing, and meter rentals are so much a quarter.
And how much do we have to pay to maintain the wells?
It depends. We have to do quarterly testing. I think I put that down there, didn't I?
Yeah, annual testing.
Annual testing, and if anything's ever found in those tests, like the PFOAs, we're gonna have to add filtration. The filtration for PFOAs are in the $20,000 to $30,000 range. Don't have an exact quote. But if we find arsenic, we know we've paid $20,000 to $30,000 for arsenic filtration in the district at 2 of our schools in the past year.
And
Another thing that's happening is manganese is becoming more prevalent, and their permissible levels has gone down. So a lot of our schools are starting to reach over the limit of the permissible level of manganese as well. They keep reducing the limits to make the water safer, and as such, we're gonna have to keep adding filtration. So anytime we can,
But the water coming from Manchester would already be doing that, right?
I don't know where the water comes from, so
It comes from Manchester
Okay.
underneath the lake
But
there.
that, everything's already treated before it gets to the school. We wouldn't have to
Exactly.
test anymore or anything like that.
Okay.
Carl, one of the things that I see here is the water cost. It's a 2019 rate, it looks like.
No, it's 2019, how many gallons we used in 2019. The rate is current on the rate sheet that I was given by the town.
Okay.
And 2019 was pre-COVID, right?
Yes, and I did have one from 2021 that was less than that a little bit, but 2019 was right around the beginning of COVID, if I remember.
Yeah.
Just spring of 2020, right?
March of 2020
Yeah, it's
that
the last full year.
we closed up, so.
Okay.
Right, and that's per year, the $4,000?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so it would just cost like $1,000 more to be, well, at least for operating costs, to be year to year on the city water.
As long as we didn't have any, it's an unfair, because if we're putting filtration in, you have to maintain the filters as well, so that's gonna be an added
So it's
cost.
actually probably gonna, in the long run, be cheaper to be on city water.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I don't want to try to pronounce potable.
Yeah, you did very well. But yes.
I have help from home.
Real fast question, a little bit, that we're talking pennies on the dollar here, the connection fee, $3,300. Connection fee, is that an inspection from the town of Plastow, their building inspector, or?
It's on the sheet they sent me.
So that's putting the pipes in and everything?
Yeah, I mean, so the way it's broken down,
I think it's the cost of us hooking into their pipes. They have to put a tap in, I would imagine, and that's gonna be, for us to connect to that, it's gonna be a one-time fee.
okay, but that, so the 33 is part of the whole sum of 44,743.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I tried to capture as much of
No,
the
and you did
information
it.
I had
It's just, okay,
currently,
there's
and
a connection fee there, there's a connection fee here, then we're gonna, charge you to unscrew. Just like, okay.
And if you have to ask them to come and flush your hydrants, it's costing more if we even get a hydrant, and then there's a fee for hooking your keeping your fire system on there.
It
However,
just
we're
seemed
already
like,
on
Then
that,
there's
so,
the
yeah.
engineering fee for them to engineer to make
Well,
certain they have the
that's-
right pressure.
Well, it's
which-
us, we have to pay for the engineers to come in and do the engineering, so it's,
Oh.
and I'm actually talking to EEI. They're the ones that are doing all the construction for us in the upcoming projects, and they're looking at that for us as well, because I've been trying to just get somebody here to do the fire system and just trying to get the manpower to come in and do anything. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
The other thing to keep in mind is that these are 2020 estimates.
Yeah, a lot of
Well-
some of the pricing is 2020.
Are you aware of what's going on with the Hampstead Area Water Company right now with the fights with the towns?
Oh, yeah.
You're aware, right, Maria?
yeah,
This
it's
is
on-
concerning to me.
I am not.
Well, you better, they are jacking the rates up incredibly to these towns.
Like 600%.
Yes, I'm
Totally
not
absolutely.
I'm not sure we want to do this.
But that's-
Honestly, you are now being held to whatever Hampstead Area Water Company is doing. I know Atkinson's got a lawyer fighting it. Danville has just been touched. There's just one community, I think, in Danville that's seeing increases. This is gonna be a huge expense if we hook into the system and we have no out.
Okay, but
You-
that,
you
you're
guys
talking
need to-
Atkinson
you
and
need to-
Danville.
Huh?
And the Hawk doesn't have anything to do with Plastow's water. We have a
Yes, it
guaranteed
does.
rate. We have a guaranteed rate from the state, I believe.
This says it right here. Water supply to Plastow would come in from East Road connecting to the existing system in Atkinson, which is owned and operated by Hawk. This
so
is
you were looking for a
I'm sorry,
turn fee
this is
from them?
ringing red bells for me. We
This
need
has-
this.
That is a
That's-
fair point.
They are,
They're building that building on East Road.
The pump
Yeah.
house.
building.
And they've gone to the state, they're literally,
they're partially regulated by the state, but my house has water, Hampstead Water. I have them, and the rates triple in the last year.
So it was my understanding that the rates in Plastow had been set, and those were separate from what Hawk was doing.
No, because it's the same company.
it's the same company.
It's
I think we
Hampstead
better check
Water
this
Company.
before
Yeah, I
we go
agree. We need
forward
to
with
do
this.
some more research on this.
Don't move forward with this until we have got this
Yeah.
totally checked out. And especially the fire suppression system, I know they were really jacking up the rates on those. If you want a point of contact that knows the ins and outs of this, Carl,
Karen Steele.
well, I'm not gonna say people's names publicly. I will give you the information. They'll
Please
set
do.
you, they'll inform you what's going on.
So with that, we were told that the fire suppression system, we have no option.
We have no option with the fire suppression. We're not going to pay any fees for being connected because we're already
That's true.
existing. So it's just our cost of upgrading our system to their new water pressures. That has to be done.
Carl, what's the timeline on that?
It's passed.
But we
I've,
can't
I've,
find anybody to-
I had Hampshire Fire out here twice, and then I called him the other day and says, "Why haven't I gotten any information?" He says, "Sorry, this guy's no longer with us. We'll be right back on it." So, so that's when I asked EEI to get involved because they're already here in our buildings. They've learned a lot, and they were very knowledgeable in our discussions because they've done it before. So, I'm asking them to expedite.
So, okay. So then, I mean, this is informational. There's no action
Yep.
on this, but I agree with what Kim's saying. I think when it comes to, that $44,000 cost that we probably want to make sure that, we double check on that, to make sure that those prices are,
It's not the hookup.
it's not the hookup, but it's the actual water.
Yeah, so we need to know what the price per gallon is, per however many gallons it is, and
Yep.
whether that's set by Plastow or another company.
Right.
And if there's any guaranteed rates for the next few years.
Right.
Need some sort of cap.
Yeah.
And so I know this is probably a dumb question, and I apologize in advance, but
He's asking it for me.
yeah,
As a teacher, there are no dumb questions.
yeah. Thank you.
Throw that in since
I
we're in a
appreciate that.
group of educators here.
Yeah. So the high school, the middle school, the SAU are all in Plastow. Are these going to be impacted by this?
No, the company that did the study Underwood Engineers, they did a study in 2008 to hook the high school, middle school pack and the SAU. It would cost us about another $1.5 million in 2020. I would guess more close to $2 million, if not more, now, but they would be running there's no lines coming down here, so we'd have to provide that.
Yeah, we looked at this
It's
before you were on the
huge.
board. Barbara and I were
It's huge.
discussing it before the meeting.
Yeah.
It's astronomical. Unless somebody else makes the move to bring it down, we're not gonna bring it down.
Right, so right
And we're
now,
not gonna be
we're
mandated
not
to do
on the
that, right?
sprinkler
They're not-
system.
Okay.
The high school and the middle school are not on the Plasto sprinkler system.
That is correct.
Right, so.
There's
pipe
no, there's
doesn't
no
go by
public
here.
water here
Okay.
on this road.
I'm just thinking
It's,
strategically
it's
down the line.
right over
of it.
there, you'd think.
Yeah.
I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's that big a cost, but because of what's happening with the astronomical increases in these rates, I'd be leery about moving forward with this do a little more research before you make that jump.
Yeah.
Getting a filtration system in for arsenic, manganese is gonna be a lot less money than paying exorbitant annual fees for water. And also reducing the water, I don't know if this is a lot, this seems like a lot of water usage for a building that size. You're not taking showers and things there, so maybe we need to look at more, sustainable water usage in the building. I don't know, just
But another
throwing things
source,
out there.
source of information might be Senator Chuck Morse. He's been instrumental in bringing the water to Plastow and making sure that we're not paying, exorbitant fees for it.
As you wish.
Here's one more thing to consider too. Maybe determine how much water is available at Pollard as well. I don't know if is Pollard on a well right now or is
We're on a
water-
well, yes.
Yeah, so maybe figure out where the water level is in the water table as well, because that could be part of the consideration.
I know the well is fairly new because they had a filtration system at one point and they switched over to this new well and they got off, they didn't have to include filtration. So we actually removed the filters out of the building because once they're used, they're not.
So are there
replaced for use.
two wells there?
There's a new well, so I don't know what happened to the old well at this time, but there is a new well in the building now. It's out in the back part of the building. I don't know when it was switched,
We have
but
had trouble in Plastow with droughts and people's wells going dry, but I assume with a new well, that wouldn't be it would be a deeper well.
I have no idea. I can try to find some information about it. I know we've had some issues with it with bacteria at one point, and we had to treat it with chlorine last fall, but since then it's been fine.
So we're comfortable asking him to look into it and ask if there are any sorts of ways to guarantee the cap or guarantee some sort of, cost per gallon for X number of years into the future. Otherwise,
Yeah, we could be looking
that's something that we're uncomfortable with. Is that fair to state?
I would say so, especially where we have a functioning well.
Right.
And the cost of the water treatment is probably,
And it's a known cost,
it's a known cost.
not being held hostage potentially.
Right, exactly. No, just something to consider.
So, Carl, maybe what we can do is, we could ask you to, I don't know if you'll have this information for our next meeting, but if not the next meeting, the meeting after that, to come back and just share with the board what you found, and I think we can, at that point, have a further discussion, if you're okay with that.
Perfect.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Is there just any let's say we don't do this year, and in 2 years we make the decision to do it, we can still hook it to that line, can't we?
Yes. At any time, I would imagine.
So I don't
But,
think we wanna jump into it.
I think they have some incentives for doing it early on because they need to get a certain amount of circulation going.
And I also feel there are grants out there for this specific reason, for this purpose, because of the PFOAs in the area. I don't know how long those grants are going to be available too, so.
We'll see if they'll incentivize us then.
Yes.
Yeah, that's, but I think to your point, Kim, right, is it from a time perspective, I mean, in 2 years, we could have the same conversation and the money may be different, but the process or the benefit.
But we can't put off the fire, the sprinkler
Yes,
That is
system.
the
correct. No,
fire
right.
needs
That has-
to
that's-
happen
right.
as soon as
Yeah.
possible, and that's
ASAP.
about 20,000, but that's a rough estimate, right?
Yeah.
For the fire.
And you said they're coming, they're now
We're working
paying
on it.
attention on that,
Yes.
right? Okay, good. All right, thank you very much, Carl, appreciate that. Next is the policies, so, we have three policies, two for first read and one for first and second read. So we'll start with ADC, which is the tobacco products ban policy. This is for first read. The recommendation is that we, essentially the policy committee adopted the New Hampshire School Board Association's policy. And then you'll see that on your, in your packets. So just looking for a motion to adopt this or to have first read for this policy.
Make that motion.
A second?
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor?
This is ADC, right?
ADC, yeah. All right, 6-0, thank you. So that's first read. I'm gonna jump to IHCA. Actually, no, I'm not. No, I'm not gonna jump there, sorry. Because there'll be conversation on that. So the next is GADA. So this is actually for first and second read. This was one of the findings in the audit. So this will, the policy committee adopted the language from the New Hampshire School Board Association, so.
I'll make a motion to approve GADA for first and second read.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Just as of a note, this is not typically the process that we follow for policies. We did announce at our last meeting that we would be doing a first and second read of this particular policy because of the audit. So once agreed upon by the board, this would be a policy that will be adopted, which is again different from our normal process. But we did talk about that at the last meeting. So I have a motion and a second discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
So here it differentiates between providing a recommendation of employment for somebody who's basically been reported versus just doing the paperwork that was asked for. How often are we asked to actually do the recommendation where this might come into play, where this policy might come into play? And I'm looking at Dana.
Usually the
Could you
payroll
come-
department handles the verification of employment, and we get a lot.
Dana, I'm sorry, Dana,
Can you come to the
can you
mic,
come
please?
sit at the table just so the public can hear you, please? Thank you.
I'm really not involved in it in Timberlane, but when I was in Nashua, it's a lot of verifications that come across. Teachers who are going to another state and teaching in that state, they want to know if somebody did something illicit in the previous school
Okay,
district.
so
that they
this
were
would
in.
actually come up. So what I was getting at is it looks like there's a loophole here where if people are just saying verification of dates of employment, then this wouldn't come into play. But if somebody's asking you for a recommendation,
Yes,
it would. And so do we actually give recommendations?
I don't believe we have, because
Okay.
we didn't have this policy up to now.
Okay, but so you view this as allowing recommendations now?
We would be able to do it now.
Okay,
We would be able to say, no, you shouldn't hire this person, there was something that happened.
okay. So it's putting some teeth into this.
Yeah. Other states have that, and New Hampshire hasn't had it.
Okay. All right, well, that's good. Thank you.
And Barbara, just as a note, one of the things that stopped the policy committee from pushing this forward at first was we wanted to send this to our lawyer to take a look at the verbiage and the language in this, and he did and said this is exactly, it's essentially almost word for word specific, like lawyer talk, right? So it's really.
Oh, yeah, I have no problem with that, but I was just wondering, in practice, what's the difference between verification
Sure.
and recommendation? Because I know in my places of employment, most of them just stick to verifying dates of employment and salary.
Yeah.
And they explicitly prohibit recommendations.
Yeah.
But now this sounds like it's allowing a recommendation and,
Right.
all right.
Because you want to protect the students, especially for the
Yes,
students.
it would have prevented some bad situations,
Yes,
for sure.
that, yes.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll take a vote. All in favor of passing GADA? 6-0. So that is for first, second, and adoption. So this policy will be adopted.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you. So for our next one, I'd like to invite Sandy up. Thank you, Sandy. So the next policy is IHCA summer learning. So this came to policy committee, just to give a little bit of a background. I've been around long enough that I can give some background, Kim.
Wow.
That's exciting. Doesn't happen very often. This policy was brought to the board, I believe, in February. It was voted down by the board at that point in time. There were questions and some concerns. And so it was pushed back to policy committee, who then pushed it back to the curriculum and assessment committee. And then it came back to the policy committee. And I'm going to turn it over to Sandy because she's on both of those to give an update on this.
Okay, thank you. So Steve is correct. This did come to the board back in February, but with different language, with a different recommendation. So just some background on summer learning. So the policy that we had had in place for quite some time spoke to a requirement for summer learning for all students. It was really the procedure that defined how that policy was implemented, that governed how we assign summer learning assignments to our students at all levels. In the previous procedure, elementary students were assigned summer learning assignments. There was no grade associated with that because we do not grade our elementary students with a traditional grading scale, letter grades or numerical grades. Middle school and high school students, however, had assigned graded assignments in math, ELA, and science, and those grades were counted and factored as 3% of their first quarter grade at both the middle school and high school. And so, we had some conversation at the Curriculum and Assessment Committee for really about 2 years. It's been something that we've been talking about for quite some time. We took some time as a committee last year to gather some data, to do research around surrounding districts to see what other districts had implemented for summer learning requirements. We did look at other policies, including the New Hampshire School Board Association sample policy. And so based on those conversations earlier this year, the Curriculum and Assessment Committee made a recommendation to tweak the wording of the former policy, which I believe you still see in your packet, what we're looking to replace. And originally what came to the board, and it went through Curriculum and Assessment Committee, was unanimously moved forward to policy. Policy Committee voted to move it to the board in February. So originally the recommended changes spoke to replacing the wording that spoke to there will be required summer work, to substitute that with may. And that did not pass at the board level. We had some conversation. We talked about the procedure and the need to also look at the procedure, which really was what was governing the grading and the assignments and the specificity of what we had been assigning for a couple of years, actually about 4 or 5 years now. We've been working with that same procedure. So it did go back to policy, came to Curriculum and Assessment Committee last month. Amy sits on that committee with me, so I'll invite you to join in at any point if you want to chime in.
Great job.
But we had some more extensive conversation. We revisited some of the data that we had collected last year connected to the percentage of completion of summer learning assignments for our students. And so we looked at the percentage of students who received zeros, so did not complete their summer learning. We also looked at students who received scores of anywhere upwards of under 50%, from 50 to 75%, and then 75% and above. So we talked a lot about some inequities that potentially exist in the system. Some of those being that some of our students who may be special education students during the summer months may or may not have access to supports that they would during the school year to complete their summer learning assignments. Many of our students attend the extended school year program, and that has been an option for them. We do have staff who work at the high school during summer school who have provided those supports, but we did talk about the potential inequities for some students to not have access to those supports. That was one thing we considered. We talked about the value of time associated with the grading of these assignments, and talked about the importance of feedback. And so in some cases, we had classes where students were receiving grades for completion only. In others, they were receiving more extensive feedback on essays, perhaps, on open-ended responses that they might be completing with response to an assignment for a different content area. And so we talked about the importance of, had we continued with the original procedure, trying to get at a point where there was more feedback around the learning so it could have value for students. The goal of personalizing our learning to the greatest extent possible for our students, so that while some students may be in need of extensive practice for certain targeted skills for certain courses or grade levels or content areas, other students may have already mastered those skills, may be in a different position, a different place, need more of a challenge, or vice versa. And so, through all of those conversations at Curriculum and Assessment Committee, we looked at options to either maintain the policy language the way it was and revise our procedure, to go back to the drawing board to see if we could recommend to policy committee. We believe that our original recommendation, we stand behind that. There was some conversation at CNA around that. Or to look at the model policy, which is actually what you see in front of you from the New Hampshire School Board Association. And with that, to also revise our procedure. And so some of the goals that we talked about as a committee, and we talked about last week at policy committee as well, that was a lot of our conversation, was shifting from a language of a mandate for all with the same for all, and moving to an approach and a philosophy of promoting, encouraging, providing differentiated options, providing ongoing options tailored to different students if possible. And that's not going to be, happen overnight, but it would be something that we intend to build upon over time, is to increase our resources for families and our strategies to share those with families and students over the summer. So we did look at the model policy at policy committee last week. I believe our vote was unanimous. So there was a motion to adopt the language of the New Hampshire School Board Association's model policy, which is what you see in your packet. And with that, there was a request that came to me to work with other members of our curriculum department to also revise the language of the procedure to speak to how will we promote summer learning opportunities, what access will families have to summer learning. The policy speaks to the district encouraging students and families to develop a plan for summer learning. So the procedure is really our attempt to talk about how we will work in partnership with families to share and communicate those summer learning options, and to the extent possible, to tailor them to individual student needs. So having conversations with teachers now as they're thinking about the end of the year, at the elementary level, writing report card comments, perhaps thinking about incorporating a recommendation or two that are specific to what students could do over the summer to extend their learning, to fill any gaps. We did not include in the procedure some of our programs that will continue to run, but that are invitation only. So ESY would be one of those. We do have Title I summer camps at our elementary schools that are Title I schools. Those are by invite only, and we determine which students are invited through a rank order system, and that's in accordance with federal guidance that we have to follow based on who is invited to those programs. The high school will continue to run summer school for credit recovery. We often do also offer courses for credit in the summer. if we are able to get our enrollment large enough. So we've run summer PE courses in the past. We've run advanced placement, summer boot camps, and things of that nature. So those will continue to happen. We'll continue with that planning. But again, we did not include that in the procedural language because those may not be for all students because some of them are either based on need for students to recover credit or retain athletic eligibility in some cases at the high school level. That's not for all, right? So that would be based on a need. Title I and ESY are also targeted programs for targeted populations of students. So this is something we hope to build on. We've started to already compile some of those resources that we will post on the website. Our goal is to connect to community summer learning activities as well and share those with families and update them throughout the summer so that it's not a static list of summer learning opportunities, but something that will be a living, breathing document posted online that families can access throughout the summer as their needs and their vacation time and their schedules adjust. So that's sort of the summary. So you see that before you. I don't know if, Amy, you wanted to add anything from our conversations at CNA that I may have missed, but.
No, you did a fantastic job. I think that we spent a long time talking about all of the elements that you discussed about inequities and trying to make this more flexible so that it can be more meaningful for students.
So just so I can make sure I understand what you're saying, I believe what I hear being said is that traditionally, everybody in the class was assigned the same summer school work, work over the summer, and then now it's going to be more individualized recommendations.
Ideally, it will be recommendation based. I think it's going to, full disclosure, it's going to take us some time to get there, right? But that would be the goal. And so it could be at the elementary level where we have more data on targeted skills for students, right? There may be recommendations and teachers may even have an opportunity to assign summer work through iReady. That would be personalized on a case-by-case basis. At the middle and high school level, it might be more course specific. And that's a different situation because especially at the high school level, if a student is in, say, Algebra 1 as a freshman, and they're going to geometry, those are very different courses, right, with some connections between them, but different content. And they're going from one teacher to another. And so a teacher who might recommend summer learning for geometry won't have the same knowledge of those students because that teacher won't have met them yet and taught them yet. So the personalization ideally is a goal. It will vary at each level, and it's something we hope to develop over time.
Cool.
Yep. But yes, to answer your question, in the past, all assignments were consistent for all students based on grade level or the course that they registered for at the high school for the following year. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, your summary is very detailed, and maybe I missed it, but is there any requirement to do any of this summer work?
So no. So that is part of, philosophically, if we were to sum up the shift from the previous policy language to the model policy, we're moving from a place of requirement to a place of encouragement, promoting it, trying to target more intrinsic motivation by finding topics that may be of inherent interest to students that they might buy into, that might further their learning, deepen their learning. But we are removing that requirement for all and trying to shift to we're going to advertise as much as we can, promote, and try to personalize and tailor it to student needs better.
Okay. And when these recommendations will be made, will that be within the context of also identifying the need so the parents understand that, even though we're recommending this, you
Yeah.
really probably should
So
do
I
it?
want to be very clear. So the goal is to move to more personalized recommendations. We are not right now at a place where this is a new proposal, right? The end of the year is upon us. I don't anticipate right now with the weeks that we have in front of us that we're going to have personalized recommendations for summer learning for every single student across the district. That will obviously be a goal that as we move to the end of the year, right, teachers can have conversations with students, could be through report card. It could be through assessment reports that go home. We have our iReady reports that go home for K-8 in the spring, or they will be going home in addition to New Hampshire state assessments. So there will be a lot of information being sent home to families. And so some of the language and the procedure speaks to, as you get this feedback from your child's teacher, try to look at, okay, so my child for this area in mathematics, right, seems to be in need of additional practice. And so as they look at the resources that we are promoting and advertising for families, ideally they can pick and choose what's going to be most effective, and potentially teachers may be able to make individual recommendations as appropriate. But it's a goal, it's not a plan we have in place that all students will leave school with this is your personalized summer school recommendation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I want to be very clear that that's not where we're at right now.
Sure.
But it's a lofty goal, and it'd be great if we could get there one day, so.
Just one more thing to
Sure.
add to that. So let's just assume that a teacher provides that feedback and says,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I see this need that this student has, and these are my recommendations. And let's assume the parent's like, okay, great. And they go through and work towards these in these different programs, does the work and whatnot.
Sure.
Is there, I guess for lack of better words, a hope that by doing what is recommended, that when that child returns in the fall, they'll actually be maybe caught up or improved?
Potentially, although, so some of the purpose of it is there's some language in here. It's really around maintenance of skills that we're striving for. I mean, ideally, we'll see some catch-up growth, but without feedback, without regular interactions, it could be different for each student. But I think the hope at a minimum level for all is maintaining a mindset around learning really is another piece. And so summer reading is something that we used to have, had summer reading, that was it, book lists for all kids. That at a minimum keeps them engaged, keeps them active, helps to maintain hopefully their reading level, get them interested and hooked in some great books. But we're hoping to get beyond that with some other skills as well.
Okay, thank you.
Would it be fair to say that the overall objective before, to prevent slippage, our one-size-fits-all approach was not very effective in that less than 1 out of 5 students actually got full credit?
Yeah.
So fully 80% of the students didn't get full credit, and for those that did, I think a lot of them were probably doing it on the school bus the day that they were riding in. So it defeated the purpose.
Yeah.
And it was overwhelming students and families, some of whom may work, et cetera. So it wasn't fulfilling its obligation, and you're looking to be involved in a more dynamic, potentially individualized, especially for the K through 8, to not only prevent slippage, but for those students who are motivated to actually perhaps have some meaningful growth.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I do think so. Those assignments were not due on the first day of school. They were due intentionally, right? The Friday after the first week of school.
Yeah, my kids had study groups over with. Yeah, I know.
Yes, yeah. And that's absolutely the case. That being said, we did still see a significant percentage of students who got zeros. I mean, we looked at that data at policy committee. And it was, in many cases, a case of compliance as opposed to engagement. And so while there is an element of compliance, right, there's accountability in learning, and we want to teach responsibility and have students really develop that and foster that in them. We also want them to engage in the learning at a deeper level for other reasons than compliance. And so,
Yep.
yeah.
Sounds good.
I realize this is New Hampshire School Board policy draft language, but to me, this does not make sense. It says, therefore, the board encourages students to have a plan for summer activities. I don't know. I think it should say the board encourages the administration to have a plan for summer activities that support students. I mean, the board doesn't go down to the level of
Students.
Asking students to
Yeah.
do things,
Yep.
yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me
Yep,
at all.
yep.
The board doesn't, that's not the board's level.
Yep.
So I'd like to see the word students changed to
Mm-hmm.
administration there. And again, I'm opposed to not having mandatory summer work.
Yep, yep.
We are seeing regardless of whether you think people are doing it on the bus the day before, the bus the day of, working on it all summer, we have got to continue to support academics. I guarantee you there's probably not one sports team player that takes the whole summer off and then jumps in the first week of school. I mean, we've got, what, my daughter played field hockey, preseason for a whole week. Do we have pre-academic season? I'm sorry, I'm just not for making this optional. Academics comes first. That's just my feeling on it.
Well, I think what I heard her say is that they're adding more support for more academic opportunities for people at different times, right?
The goal would be to, right, so different levels are going to look different. So sample activities, learning opportunities at the high school level are going to look very different than what it might look like for a kindergarten student. But the goal would be to update throughout the summer as we can, if we can connect to summer learning opportunities at the local libraries, at museums, at, right, so things that might engage students in a different way. To Dr. Farah's point, they're not skills-focused practice, right, which I think is what you're speaking to.
Right.
And the need to prepare for the coming year and practice skills and fill those gaps. When we talked about this at CNA, and again at policy, but more so at CNA, we did spend some time talking about those other programs that are by invitation, that really are trying to get at those student populations that have the most significant growth to make. And so those will still be happening, and we are working on expanding those for all students. Staffing is challenging. You know, we've talked about trying to expand our academic skills-focused summer learning camps. That is still something we are working on. It is challenging right now, but that is what we would hope to move to. Right now, based on where we're at, it's been challenging. So I don't know.
Just don't have
yeah.
the staff that are available to provide it right now.
But we will continue to work on that. That is still a goal for those students who have the most significant need of the ongoing practice, and where it's not about maintenance of skill, it is about trying to provide some catch-up growth for those kids.
I mean, I just want to let
Yeah,
you know,
yep.
I'm just agreeing to disagree
Yeah,
on this
no,
topic.
that's okay.
Just my
Yeah, we've
personal
talked
opinion.
about it before, and
Yeah,
I respect and
I'm
appreciate your
not gonna go away.
perspective. Yep,
If this passes or not, it doesn't,
that's fine.
that's just my own opinion on it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we did have this type of conversation at the policy committee and talking about, you know, really looking at our test scores and was this really the right time to look at a policy like this and make any changes given, you know, where our test scores were. And I think, you know, I think what for me really kind of made me, you know, think that this was a good way of moving was looking at the data that Sandy provided and the impact that this was having on our students. And, you know, what the scores weren't significantly higher. I think, again, Mark kind of threw out some stats, and 80% of the students weren't completing it and were essentially starting school, you know, really behind because of those grades. So, yeah, I definitely understand, you know, where you're coming, Kim, and agree that, you know, we need to continue to foster education over the summer and learning over the summer. And, you know, I hope that this policy allows for that to be sort of geared towards and individualized towards those students and what will help make, you know, that learning over the summer fun.
So are we making a motion to return this to policy for a change on that student's word?
I don't think it has to go back
No,
to policy
I'll
for
make
that.
a motion to approve this policy with the following change, that it says the board encourages administration to have a plan. So that's my motion for the
I'll
first
second
read.
it.
All right, so I have a motion and a second with changes to that. Any other discussion? All in favor of this policy with those changes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 1. So this will pass with a 5-1. We will update those changes. First read. Actually, this is only first read, so, we'll update the changes, it will come back, next meeting for second read.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Sandy.
Next is the special education surveys.
So, question, yeah, Kelly Brooks is going to join us. You have 4 surveys in your packet. I only have 3 in mine.
I only have 3.
Okay,
I have 3.
Three.
para, family, administrators.
Okay, there should be a teachers and I just printed them on the, and I can start if. Sorry about that. So this is part of our special education study, and we expect that, let's say, probably in the last, we'll be able to bring a final report this summer. I expect to complete all of the work on it through June and bring it forward at one of the summertime meetings. But, so this survey is, I will tell you, historically, going back to 2004 and 2007, where I was before, we had a very lengthy survey, too lengthy. This is a very shortened version, quite frankly. There are 4 different surveys. There is one for surveying administrators, one special education family survey, so that's for family members of students who are identified for special education, one for paraprofessionals, and then what Kelly's handing out is one for teachers and related service providers. Didn't have the option to staple it from printing it here for some reason, so I apologize. It should have, yeah, it was collated. Yeah, I have, I'll take one, just because
I have a couple questions on these
Yes.
surveys.
Sure.
Have these questions are these standard questions? Have these been piloted before? Are these questions that you've made up? You as in the district?
Yeah, some are similar, or, were born from the questions that we had done,
Thank you.
2004 and 2007, and we worked with UNH Survey Center. After we had come up with questions, we had UNH Survey Center refine them for us. But then, Kelly and I really did more refining and, to these questions, tried to get them more clear and direct to gather the information that we're looking for.
Okay. I'm concerned about sending out a survey to the entire population without having done a little pilot study to make sure your survey is asking the questions and getting the answers that you want. And my other big concern here,
Yep,
this is just me,
That's why we're here.
having done survey research,
okay.
is that you have 4 answers instead of 5. Typically, you have a Likert scale that's 5, and then you can convert these answers into a numeric value, and then you can run statistics on this. So why do you have 4 responses and not 5 on this instead of a standard scale?
Neutral is missing.
Yeah.
Right.
We had a long conversation about that, I will say. It was in, and then it was out, and then it was in, and it was out. So I don't think we're married to it, but the
I'm
neutral
not a
one was.
statistician, but I just got dinged on some stats on an article we just published, so you should have 5. You
Yep.
should have 5, and that way, and then they should be converted 1 to 5. And then you're gonna be able to take a look at, what your mean and your standard deviation is based on that. With 4, you're just not gonna be able to, you're not gonna, I think Mark agrees with me shaking his head, yeah, you
Yes,
just.
you heard the rattle, yeah.
You need 5. You need 5 responses, and then there's one question here, or one survey, which one was it?
And the reason we took it, we were looking for more commitment in those answers, but
And
your
really,
point
if you
makes complete sense, so.
If you've got the option to have UNH take a look at this, I would, because there was one survey, I've lost it, where the question was the same, and it had a 1 to 5 scale, and there was only one question that was 1 to 5 scale. But it was very odd
Complete
to me.
understanding, it's under Special Ed Family Survey, question number 5.
Yeah, on a scale of 5.
Yeah, And it wasn't,
Yeah.
it was set up different, and if you're,
Right.
if you wanna get responses on a survey, it has to be,
Consistent.
people do it quickly, so.
Yep.
I'm a proponent of doing these surveys. I think you're gonna gather some valuable data, but I think that you really need to, make sure the questions are, and to be honest, not that you wanna be spending all summer, but I find the most value in a survey like this is open response questions. And I don't see anything here, like,
There's a
those
few others.
comments, a lot of times are the ones that are gonna,
So the,
the text box, that's what I mean.
so the plan for that, because Google Form, you don't have any way of really compiling that data, but we have Thought Exchange. Is Sandy still over? Yeah, so
What about,
But it loses context.
but you can do it on, you could get a license, a professional license to Survey Monkey and do
Sure.
it and gather that
sure.
data.
what we had
Right.
thought was that we would be able to then use Thought Exchange, which is a great tool. I know some of you are familiar with it for, organizing themes and things for that kind of open response. But we could do.
Sites
survey-
could
The
feed
problem
that.
is you want the open
Yeah, it would be
response from the
different.
same
We'd
grouping.
follow up with the take the information that we get from this and follow up with more
I think you may
specific
lose
questions.
people. I think if you have sort of a one shot where you have open, like a text box, that you have the ability to make comments in it. My concern is you would lose, I think you lose some momentum, right? Where you have somebody who's sitting in front of this, devoting some time, and then another email comes out and they're like, well, didn't I just do this? And now I have to like formulate my thoughts that are probably different from when they actually, did the survey.
No, but from a survey point of view, you can't do that, because then you've got two different, so if I say.
He's agreeing with you.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's what he's saying,
Yeah,
Kim.
that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
that you can't have separate links, right, where you're doing it on two separate occasions.
Right,
I
you
think
can't,
that's bad.
it needs to be,
Right.
it needs
He's
to be
agreeing.
within the
Right.
same
Yeah,
survey.
sorry. Thanks, Mark.
And then you need to think about, if you do open response, you need to think about coding those and having them thematic.
Yeah.
So if you get 100 comments, I don't want, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think,
This-
I think
then it could
we
feed
had
into
lots
Thought
of
Exchange.
conversations about what this could look like, and we just started looking at, one, is that we want to do the special ed audit and get some information to you. The other thing is all of those things are great, it just means that we're just pushed back, and I think, maybe, I don't want to say permission, but we need something to say, like, we're not at a point to put something out that is like, that's why we're asking you to look at it, but we're not going to be able to have all that information for June, which is what we had said we would do, and
Oh,
so,
for us? Is
right.
that what you're worried about us?
Yeah, don't worry
Oh,
about
don't
us.
worry
about
Yeah,
us.
no,
No.
I,
Well-
I, yeah, don't worry about us. I mean,
Okay, well.
honestly, I think this is so important
Yeah.
that I think,
Let's
as
get it
Kim
right.
said, using
Get it right.
UNH if possible, I think let's get it right.
Yeah.
I would even, I'm not opposed to looking at, Survey Monkey and getting a license to
We-
really
think we
put it
already
all
have one.
together.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's cheap, it's not expensive,
I-
so,
I have my own license
Um,
still, but I
yeah.
believe we have a
I'm
license.
pretty sure the
for
district
Survey
has one.
Monkey.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I think it was just a timeliness piece of wanting
No,
to,
no, I
so if
appreciate that.
there's,
Thank
if
you.
there's no
Yeah.
requirement on that, we're gathering a lot of other information right now, some really good information, so if there
Right.
isn't,
Sorry, no, finish.
I was gonna say, if there isn't that push, I think we would have more time to have more thoughtful conversations about what
Yeah.
it could look like.
So
The
I-
other side, though, of completing the audit, we do want to complete it sooner than later, so we can really move forward with recommendations for making changes for this coming school year.
Yeah.
We don't want to wait. Now, I think we can still do that without some of the information. There are some changes that we can, and recommendations that we can make moving forward without this information, but with some of the information that we currently have. But that was the other sense of urgency that we have, is to move forward with what it is that we need to do to improve our service delivery model.
So I guess ideally, and this is probably something for you both to think about, ideally, what would be most effective to incorporate change, timeline-wise, like of getting these surveys out where you have the most effective responses and things like that.
Right.
And then I would use that as sort of your launching point, right? So, if you say that that's July 1st, just throwing out a date, then, you come to the board right before then, right? But I agree, I just think we wanna
Sure.
get this right.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to do so.
Yeah.
But I will say that we really appreciate, the urgency that the board set. So I mean, that's, yeah, we appreciate that.
Well, I think the other thing is we don't want to lose parents, because what happens is school gets done and then
Summertime.
nobody's checking and whatever. And then
Yeah.
summer is the best time for us to be able to collaborate with other people.
Right.
And so as we push more and more back, I can tell you August is you're in the next year already. So
Yeah.
we have a very small timeline to want to be able to, but we do have a lot of information already that we've collected.
Yeah.
Two questions.
Sure.
Is this intended to be anonymous?
Yes.
Because some of the questions on the administrator and such.
I know, it gets
make
close.
real clear who's who.
I know.
That's why I always lie.
Yeah, and then you're expecting each parent to fill in one of these for each of their students?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I could see where you wanna get this done before the end of your school year. So, I think what I would do is, you know, the board's recommending, I make it a 5-point scale.
Yeah.
I'd find some, you know, allow for open response questions, even if it's just something as simple as, do you have anything else you'd like to add? You know? And then that way you could take those, and I'd use something like Survey Monkey, cause it's easy, and then you can, you know, eliminate people. You know, they can't retake it, but you've gotta just be careful, and also, you know, probably, you have a faculty member in your high school that teaches AP statistics. I would take this and say, give us your,
Yeah.
probably, you know, so I think you can get it done pretty quickly without, and have good information.
And maybe do a small test pilot.
And do a small test pilot with a couple people, just to see if there's questions that just not, or like I said, maybe ask somebody, you know, one of your faculty, or somebody here probably has a good stats background, just ask them to take a look at it.
Sure. Thank you.
And make sure you can get the data out and, you know, do the ANOVAs and all the fun stuff with it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't wanna go past the first week in June with this, or you won't probably
Right.
get the responses. You wanna do it before the end of the
We
school
don't,
year.
we don't wanna stall you too much.
Yeah, we don't wanna, I'm not, well, yeah, we don't wanna stall you, but, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
Great. All right, next is school board to visit schools. So I think this is more informational in that there have been a couple of questions about, that have come to me about when can we get into schools and talk to, you know, principals and teachers, and so there are RSAs around, you know, the guidance of that. And so Superintendent Kellen and I have kind of talked about that and what we think would be potentially the best time for us as a board to get out to the schools if that's something that we'd like to do. And we were thinking summertime to talk to the principals, set up some time over the summer for school board members to go to the school if they choose to talk to some of the principals, and
And tour
You
the
know.
facilities.
and tour the facilities, and you know, that way we you know, we can get a better sense of you know, what's going on there, or at least talking to the principals and understanding what they're doing for the next school year and things like that. So I think there'll be more of like a schedule as we get towards you know, the end of June, but I just wanted to let the board know that we are working on this, and we'll have some more formalized time set up for each of the schools.
And we could maybe hit 2 schools a day.
Yeah.
Unless there's like some person who asks like tons of questions and makes it run long.
Then we'll just leave Steve behind and we'll.
Yeah.
Would you be able to touch on briefly some of the restrictions and RSAs, or some of the guidance that is given for going and interacting with the principals, the teachers, et cetera? As a,
It's a policy. By policy, board members are not supposed to be going into school buildings, and really even, I mean, not that, obviously you talk to your teachers, but remember, they're part of a collective bargaining unit. You should not be having conversations about board actions, board policy. I don't mean you, I mean the proverbial board you. So it's governed by RSA, but more specifically by our own board policies, that we don't interfere with the day-to-day operations of the district, because that's the superintendent's job. So,
To interfere with the,
yeah, that's your job. That's your job. It's not our job, it's your job to run the day-to-day operation. So, I don't have the policy off the top of my head, but it's clearly articulated.
But traditionally, we have a day when, you know, we visit the schools and
Yeah,
meet the
yeah,
principals.
yeah,
And
but as a matter of course, you should not be interacting with personnel, because that's the superintendent's purview, and in actuality, the board, as a governing body, has to sometimes hear from teachers or staff if there's an issue where
appeal
we
of
have to make a decision to overrule the superintendent. So that's why it's important that the board remains neutral.
Did that answer you?
it
Did that
does,
help?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, you can
I
go
can get
through
you
the
the
policies, there's a
policy,
policy on it.
Yeah. Perfect.
If I make a,
Yes, please.
make a comment too, we do have actually tours of the schools scheduled as part of the budget committee in
Oh,
the
yeah.
early fall, I believe is the last week of August. It's in the budget committee, so we have already scheduled the tours of the schools. So
Great.
And some of the new, I know the middle school principal, Mr. Mensis, and also Mr. Vacareza, actually invited all the
Yeah.
board members to come and meet with them on an individual basis. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mensis, it's been a year, but I'll get there. So, you know, they can do that by invitation, but we should not be inviting ourselves, that's their purview.
Yeah.
And they run it by the superintendent before they make that offer.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Not seeing any. Next would be the NASDAQ enrollment projections. So in your packet, we have sort of enrollment summary. So help me understand this a little bit more. The NASDAQ is something that is a predictor based on historical data of what enrollment looks like from a year-to-year basis. Correct?
Yes, it
Yeah.
gives the projections out for the next 10 years
Right.
as to what they project the enrollment in the district is going to be. It's usually very, very accurate, because I think they base it on demographic data
Yeah.
and how many houses are being built and things like that. So as an aggregate, it's usually very, very beneficial. When you get down into the schools, it may be off by a little bit, because sometimes it's a little hard to tell at the school level. But generally speaking, it is very, very spot on. I asked for it to be put on the agenda and to be brought forward, because it came up in a previous discussion about class sizes and things. So if you flip to page 6, and again, like Michael, you're on the strategic planning committee, which is developing the plan for the next 5 years, you're gonna see that the district is going to start to grow through the next 10 years, and we're gonna approach adding maybe about another 350 students, which is,
Still
you know,
below what we were in
relatively a lot,
2011.
but still lower than we saw, I don't know, in the 80s or 90s.
In 2011.
In 2011. So we're starting to see a little bit of a growth, but nothing, you know, that we saw when we were in 2006, where we had 4150.
Yeah.
So it's just important when you're thinking about planning. My big concern is the Sandown schools and how the impact of the growth, especially in the Sandown area, on those two schools. Because historically, remember, we had this whole thing, oh, we're out of space in Sandown North. Yeah, Lucy remembers that conversation. You're almost as old as me, Lucy. Historically speaking.
Make sure that makes the notes, yeah.
Yeah, not chronologically. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know where that ever, it was like this big, the house is on fire and then it's gone away. So I'm not sure if it's gonna come back again. Oh, you're nodding your head. So this is something we need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, on these slides, they have the projected enrollment, but it doesn't say that they, oh, here it is, the school district here is Danville. It's very small.
Yeah, they do
Yeah,
break it out by
yeah.
school. So I think it's important as you, and again, it comes into play when you start to think about how many teachers you're gonna need moving forward and things like that, and projections on the budgets. So I think it's important.
Yep.
And, you know, I'm gonna put it out here, cause I keep saying this to people, and Sandown people probably get very mad at me, but that's okay. I still think strategically, the plan would be to consolidate the two Sandown schools at some point into one, and that the payback would probably be under 5 years, because now you're duplicating administration, maintenance, food service, and everything else. I don't know why we ever, I mean, I know why, but having two schools in Sandown, if I were on strategic planning, I'd be looking at that. It would be a savings to the district as a whole to somehow consolidate that down to one school. That's my own opinion. And somebody in the back is nodding yes, so.
You wanna,
I don't know if you
anything
wanna
you wanna
step
say?
into that or just, no, it's fine. So it's up to you, walking into the fire.
I mean, I think that it's fair to say that we have those conversations at North a lot, that they're busting. They don't really have space. So we were able to add one classroom, but that's not because there is an open space where they're gonna have to reshuffle, maybe put some special education teachers more into one room, sharing space. So Sandown North continues to be a concern. I will tell you that if you look at the Timberlane, the regional school district page, which is usually page 1, the pre-K and K numbers consistently seem to be very off. So the historical page versus what we actually have this year, what they list us as having this year, pre-K and K are the largest discrepancy. The other grades 1 through 5 were no more than 5 students different, one way or the other. So it seems to be very accurate.
They are very accurate.
Projected, which is page 3, versus what we have today for enrollment next year. Again, pre-K and K are very overinflated. We're up to like 36 off in K, but the other grades are no more than 6 different.
Wow.
So certainly as we move up, those numbers seem to be pretty accurate. I'm not clear in there where they pull the pre-K, and if they pull pre-K as our 3s and 4s, or if they just pull it as our 4s. But for me, what I find is odd is the kindergarten numbers are very off.
Maybe it's the different, don't you have half-day and full-day kindergarten, or is
I
that?
counted them all as K, right?
I don't know.
So I don't know, but.
Does that include privates?
That's a good question.
Is there a number of private kindergartens and pre-Ks around?
I guess.
My guess is yes.
Not private schools, though, that we would count, right? Because we give these numbers, correct? Someone had to turn in the spreadsheet of numbers.
I'm trying to, I mean,
But you wouldn't necessarily know whether a student was going to be going to a private or,
correct, we would not know.
so that's
Or
why the numbers.
homeschooled,
right.
if they're homeschooled, or,
But are you saying that the historical numbers are inaccurate as well for pre-K?
So the historical page says 101 for this year. It's the last row in the tiny print.
Oh.
We actually only have 87.
Oh, so the historical numbers are higher than what we actually have.
Yes.
Got it.
And same, sorry, the opposite for kindergarten, their number is lower than what we actually have by 8, whereas all the other grade levels are within 5. The projected, though, for next year, projected has kindergarten at 242, and we right now only have 206 enrolled for next year.
So-
And they have 105 for pre-K, we only have 96.
But then those numbers reconcile as they go.
They do, absolutely, they do, yep.
So again, it may be we don't know how they're accounting for the privates, right? So if they reconcile in first grade, but they don't before that,
Yeah.
Do they reach
X plus
out,
one
maybe
equals
they
2.
reach out to some of the private providers and are getting numbers from them? Like, my daughter went to a private kindergarten, maybe they reach out to those agencies, I don't know.
Or is this based on census data or anything like that?
I
Well,
don't
it does
use
say
a
some are
combination
based
of
on
data.
estimated
Yeah,
births.
that could be,
For births, it would, but.
yeah, that could, that would seem more accurate, right? Where they
Right.
have
They use
like
a
the
combination.
projected number of people at that age in that town, and wherever they go, they're just putting all the data together. And we may not be seeing that, but the town as a whole or outside, right? I mean, yeah, that would,
There's some variance, I know, because I've worked with, other places that have done these kinds of projections as well, and they gather that information. For example, though, I know when my son was born, and he was born in Holy Family, we lived in Atkinson. It never got reported to the town for some, the hospital never reported him to the town. Got the annual report that year, saw all these other kids listed, I was like, oh, why wasn't our son listed? But they just never reported.
So it's because
But
we're
he's
a
being
border
counted,
town.
yeah,
But I
he's being
guess
counted in
it's-
Holy Family for kindergartner though.
but again, I think it's, I think equal, so I understand what you're saying, Lucy, in that the pre-K and the kindergarten. I would be more concerned if, I'm not concerned, but the fact that it's almost reconciling in first grade kind of helps the prediction from right,
Yes.
1 through 12 versus,
Yeah.
the pre-K and K. But, yeah, it's interesting.
I was pleasantly surprised to see how close they were because it's based off of births, right? And you think about the amount of construction and move-ins, right? So to say that those numbers are as close in those grades 1 through 5, knowing that families have left and families
Sure.
have moved in, but there's been a lot of new construction, and so those numbers are really close.
Yeah, they're very good
How often do
projections.
they do this? Is this in every year?
Every year we get this,
Yeah.
usually in October.
Yeah, this is really good data, and I do agree that from the strategic planning perspective, right, this is
Yeah.
definitely something, you guys should definitely look at, so. Great, any other questions on this? Lucy, thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, not hearing any. We go to the administrative report.
So we are completing our New Hampshire SAS testing. There are still some students that have makeups to do and things like that, but largely we are on our way to finishing the New Hampshire SAS assessment. So I know that's exciting for a lot of people. Individual student reports will be, we've yet to decide specifically when those will be sent home, but it's usually, closer to the end of the year. But we will not have, the state will not have information and cut scores available, and we won't have state comparison data until October of the coming year, so. But individual student reports will be going home for the end of the year, or before the end of the year. Friday night, May 20th, is the senior prom being held at Atkinson Country Club. I know students are excited to, be back to having these events. I know we had the prom last year, and it was a great success where it was outdoors, but this is back to, I think, their tradition of being at the Atkinson Country Club, so. Passion projects are happening at the middle school, and I met today with a young man, Hunter Newman, who has some ideas about what they're doing is they're coming up with different ideas about things that they can improve or things that they'd like to see worked on. So I've had a couple of students reach out to me, and I've gone and met with, I was going to meet with Riley Doyle and Abby McGonigal the other day, but they needed to reschedule, so we'll reschedule at some point with them soon. They're looking at replacing some sinks in the bathrooms. Carl and I have been talking about some of these things as well, and really working to encourage the students to develop a plan to, taking a look and seeing what does it entail, what you're looking for. Today, meeting with Hunter, it's about the basketball court outside at the middle school. And he had some, good ideas, and he also had some good information. He was talking about, well, couldn't we just, repave the whole thing? And I said, well, have you looked into the cost of things, you know? And he said, yeah, what I was seeing was it's at least $10,000 to do something like that. Yeah, so, you know, it's probably more, but close, you know, he had a good sense of it, so. But he had some other, he was really great, and I talked about, well, you know, let's come up with a list, we'll do some emailing back and forth, create a spreadsheet or something, and take a look at what are the things that we can improve upon, you know? So, working with some students to do that, and it's really exciting. I'm glad they reached out to us, so please, we have a couple of our middle school folks here today, if you can, you know, share and encourage students to reach out anytime. I'm happy to spend some time doing that with them. It's exciting, so. That's all I have for now.
Wow, thank you. Next is the personnel report. So,
go-
yeah, sorry.
You want me to- I'll go
Yeah,
ahead and make these.
that would be great.
Board members, I am gonna make 2 administrative nominations. We will hold off on the one that you see, number 1, until after we go into a non-public. I'd like to nominate Maura Maher for Director of Guidance, grades 6 through 12 in the middle school and high school. And also Erica Chauvin for Special Ed Coordinator in the high school.
Second?
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Great. 6-0.
And then,
And Mara is here with us. I just wanted to.
Yeah,
That could have been awkward.
welcome. Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you for coming.
great. Moving on to the nominations, Philip Balanoff for Physical Ed Teacher in the middle school, Kelly Graham, Special Ed Teacher in Danville Elementary, Amy Lagasse, School Counselor in Pollard, Cassandra Mello, Special Ed Teacher in Danville, Kristen Paulson, Elementary Teacher in Sandown North, Ashley Sarney, English Education, Timberlane Middle School, and Christopher Weidenfeld, Physical Education in the middle school.
I'll second.
All right. We have motion and second. All in favor? Great. Thank you.
Moving on to professional resignations. Stephanie Barkanek, science teacher in the high school. Megan Carter, school psychologist, Pollard and Atkinson Academy. Lisa Kennedy, technology teacher in Atkinson. Nancy Levitt, math teacher in the middle school. Clyde Perez
Cataneda, maybe?
Cadeneta, thank you, special ed in the high school. Lauren Smith, math teacher in the high school, and Andrea Orkaiser, technical education in the high school. I'd like to accept those resignations and thank all those staff for their work in the district. Some have been here for several years.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Great.
And then, one more administrative, resignation. This is Megan Corcoran, the assistant principal at Danville Elementary.
I'll second.
All in favor?
I would just like to say a thank you. I know it's been, Danville has had some administrative issues over the last few years, and I know that she stepped in quite frequently to help out there. So thank you for your work in Danville.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say again, we're seeing a lot of interest in the positions that are being filled, so I believe we're getting a good crop.
Great. Thank you. Committee reports. Michael?
So we had our strategic planning committee this past week on Tuesday, and it was a small meeting. We were just kind of going over in determining who we want to have involved at the next meeting. So we developed a list of administrators based on what was on the current strategic plan, and then we're hoping to start drafting up, or rather reviewing what's on the current strategic plan, then start drafting a new plan, and then work on when we're going to start pulling in members of the public so we can get their input And we're also including more members from the administration compared to the last strategic plan committee because we felt that there could be some more areas that could be developed. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, thank you. Barbara?
No updates.
Kim?
Okay.
So I had policy. We met this past week. We are actually not meeting in June because of conflicts of schedule with graduation and end of year events. We are going to meet in July for sort of a prolonged meeting where I think we're going to have a sort of a 4-hour session in which we're going to read a lot of policies and hopefully get many of those policies to the board towards the end of the summer. So looking forward to that. And that date I believe we have determined, but we'll get that out to the group. So Amy?
Nope.
Mark?
You covered it.
Sorry, next time I'll let you do that.
No worries, man.
Nothing in the correspondence. Vendor payroll.
I do have
Oh, we do? Oh.
You've seen this one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That went out to the board, right?
Yeah, that's already gone to the board. Yep. Vendor and payroll registers, any questions or comments on that?
Oh, Michael's doing a great job asking questions, right, Maria?
Had a lot of questions.
We do have your questions. I was sick Monday and Tuesday this week, so I
Sure.
am behind schedule.
No,
Very
it's
behind
all right.
schedule, so
It's not a race.
we're working on it.
Yeah, it's all right. Thank you.
We'll get you answers.
Hope you feel better soon.
Great, and thank you both, Michael and Barbara, for really taking a close look at that and reaching out to Maria with those questions. All right, if there's no other business, I am going to ask that we do go into a short non-public under 91-A:3C. I don't believe we'll be coming out of non-public.
Except it's-
Well, we will come out of
We
non-public.
don't need to,
We won't need the
We'll be there for
the video, and, but we will,
No, they don't, they won't.
yeah,
we're all set.
yeah, we're all set, so,
I'll make a motion to enter 91A:3, paragraph 2, under C, or A and C.
A and C, yep. Great, I have a motion,
We need roll call?
I need a second first.
Second?
Yeah, thank you, I'm getting good at this.
Hey!
Really, no, I'm not, I'm just kidding.
Getting.
No, please don't. Now we do need a roll call.
Michael Boucher,
Present.
Kim Farah,
Present.
Stephen Finnegan,
Yes,
Amy Gentile,
Yes.
Barbara Kishka,
Yes.
Mark Sherwood.
Yes.
awesome. We have yeses and presents, so, we are good, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.